For a long time, I thought coffee was to blame for those ups and downs that appear after the morning. But the key is not in quitting it, but in not drinking it alone. When paired in the right way, the body can respond with greater balance, and blood sugar becomes more stable. I am Dr. Ryota Morisaki, focused on healthy habits and metabolic balance, with more than 20 years of experience. Now, let's get to the important part. These 4 foods are not chosen at random. Each one fulfills a different function when coffee enters the scene. Some act quickly, others work quietly, and number 4 is usually the most underestimated of all. When I mention cinnamon in relation to coffee, I am not talking about a culinary detail or a way to make it more pleasant to the palate. I want to make it clear from the start. It is not about flavor, it is about balance. And that difference, although it may seem small, profoundly changes the way the body experiences the morning and how it manages sugar throughout the day. Coffee is a direct stimulant. It enters quickly, wakes you up, accelerates processes. For many years, the body usually responds without difficulty, but over time, that response becomes more sensitive. Not worse, simply more reactive. When that stimulant enters alone, without any kind of accompaniment, the organism has to compensate more than necessary. And that compensation, repeated every day, leaves silent signals. I am not talking about pain or obvious symptoms. I am talking about sensations that many people normalize. Hunger that appears too soon, sudden changes in energy, a feeling of internal emptiness shortly after coffee. These signals do not draw attention, but they say a lot. They are the language with which the body warns that something is not entirely balanced. And that is where sugar begins to behave in a less stable way. Cinnamon appears as a discreet, almost invisible support. It does not invade the routine nor demand drastic changes. In the Eastern way of understanding nutrition, especially in the Japanese tradition, intense stimulants are rarely consumed in isolation. There is always something that accompanies, that softens, that prepares the body to receive what is coming. That logic does not seek to enhance, it seeks to harmonize. When coffee is combined with cinnamon, many people describe a different experience. Not more intense, but more even. The energy feels less explosive. The body seems to go through the morning with greater continuity, and that feeling of stability is key when the goal is to regulate sugar without forcing the organism. Diabetes does not appear from one day to the next. In most cases, it builds slowly from everyday patterns. It is not a single food. It is not a single decision. It is the sum of internal responses that are repeated. Drinking coffee in a certain way can be part of that pattern, and accompanying it better can help make that response less extreme. Cinnamon does not act as a switch or as an immediate solution. It works as a modulator. Instead of pushing the body in one direction, it helps it move more calmly. From the Japanese perspective, this relates to respect for internal rhythms. It is not about dominating the body, but about listening to it and accompanying it. Many people believe that caring for sugar involves eliminating pleasures or living with constant restrictions. But the body usually responds better when it does not feel attacked. Cinnamon, naturally integrated into coffee, can favor a more predictable, kinder response. It does not control, it does not impose, it accompanies. Over time, what often changes is not only the energy but the relationship with hunger. That urgent need to eat something shortly after coffee begins to decrease in some people, not because the body is blocked, but because the initial stimulus was better received. Less shock generates less chain reaction. In Japan, there is a very rooted idea that runs through nutrition, movement, and even the way of working. Avoid extremes. Seek the middle point. Cinnamon fits perfectly into that philosophy. It does not stand out. It does not seek protagonism. It simply fulfills its function quietly, helping the coffee not to arrive as an isolated impact. Another important aspect is the ease of sustaining this habit. Cinnamon does not require calculations, measurements, or constant controls. It integrates without friction, and everything that does not generate friction has more possibilities of lasting over time. When we talk about diabetes and blood sugar balance, consistency is usually more valuable than any intense but brief action. From my experience observing daily routines, I see that the most effective changes are not the most striking. They are the ones that are repeated without effort. Accompanying coffee with cinnamon is one of those simple gestures that can make a silent difference in how the body manages the morning. The body appreciates when it does not have to compensate too much from early on. It appreciates when stimuli arrive gradually. And although each organism responds differently, the feeling of greater stability is a sign that many recognize when they start paying attention. Cinnamon, in this context, does not promise anything extraordinary. It does not seek quick results. It only adds to the routine as a constant support. And in that consistency, sugar finds a more stable ground to behave predictably, without noise, without extremes, without demanding more from the body than necessary. When this small adjustment is sustained over time, what changes is not only the morning, the relationship with the rest of the day changes. The body stops going from one extreme to another and begins to respond with greater continuity. And that, when we talk about sugar and diabetes prevention, is much more important than is usually believed. Something I observe frequently is that many people look for big signals to confirm that something works. They expect to feel an immediate impact, but the body does not always speak that way. Many times it expresses itself with silences, with the absence of certain ups and downs, with an energy that neither shoots up nor collapses. Cinnamon, when accompanying coffee, usually acts precisely at that level. It is not noticed for what it causes, but for what it prevents. In traditional Japanese routines, there is a very simple but powerful concept. Before introducing something that activates, the ground is prepared. It is not about stopping, but about ordering the response. Coffee, taken alone, enters as a direct stimulus. When it is accompanied, the body does not need to react so abruptly. That lesser internal demand is key for those who seek to keep sugar within a more stable range throughout the day. Many older people tell me something similar. They do not feel a spectacular change, but they notice that the feeling of urgency shortly after coffee no longer appears. There is not so much anxiety to eat something sweet. There is no such sudden drop in energy. These perceptions are not diagnoses or promises. They are signs that the body is going through the stimulus in another way, with fewer shocks. Diabetes is not only related to what is eaten, but to how the body responds to each stimulus. When that response is very intense, the system has to compensate. And when it has to compensate every day, it wears out. Accompanying coffee with cinnamon can help make that response kinder, more gradual. It eliminates nothing. It replaces nothing. It softens. From my perspective, one of the most common mistakes is thinking that caring for sugar implies living in constant alert. Measure, restrict, control. But the body responds better when it feels accompanied, not watched. Cinnamon is part of that logic. It does not generate tension. It does not introduce a new concern. It simply adds to the routine as a silent support. In Japan, this way of thinking is seen in many aspects of daily life. The maximum immediate performance is not sought, but sustainability. What can be repeated without wear? What does not break the rhythm? Health, from this perspective, is built with small gestures that are maintained, not with drastic changes that last little. Something interesting is that cinnamon does not force you to modify the coffee itself. It does not change its essence. It does not turn it into something else. It only accompanies it. And that idea is fundamental. It is not about giving up what one enjoys, but about integrating it in a smarter way. When coffee stops being alone, the body stops feeling pushed from early on. Over the weeks, many people describe a feeling of greater predictability. They know how they are going to feel after coffee. There are no more surprises. And that predictability is very valuable when the goal is to regulate sugar and reduce risks associated with diabetes. The body appreciates when it can anticipate and not react defensively. It is important to remember that each organism is different. What feels one way for one person may feel different for another. That is why I always recommend observing, listening, and adjusting calmly. Always consult with your trusted doctor. Cinnamon does not replace any professional indication, but it can be part of a more conscious and balanced approach. From my experience, the habits that work best are those that do not generate resistance, those that are not experienced as an obligation. Cinnamon meets that. It does not demand effort. It does not require extra discipline. It integrates without friction. And when something does not generate friction, it has many more possibilities of staying. Over time, this type of accompaniment helps the body not have to compensate so much from the morning. Less compensation usually translates into less internal wear, and that lesser wear is one of the keys when we talk about prevention, especially in relation to sugar. Cinnamon then does not act as the protagonist. It acts as support, like that detail that does not draw attention but sustains everything else. In Japanese philosophy, sometimes the most valuable thing is what is not seen, but fulfills its function every day without failing, and the next one is not added to the cup. It would be interesting if you tell us in the comments if you ever thought that a gesture as simple as accompanying coffee with cinnamon could influence how your body handles sugar every morning, yes or no. We want to know your experience. When pure cacao is mentioned, many people immediately associate it with the chocolate they have known forever. But here there is an essential difference that changes everything, especially when we talk about regulating sugar and how certain daily habits can influence, over time, processes linked to diabetes. Pure cacao is not a sweet, it is not a dessert, and it does not fulfill the same function as regular chocolate. Its role is different, much quieter and much more aligned with balance. Industrial chocolate usually comes loaded with contrasts: intense sweetness, quick stimulus, immediate sensation. Pure cacao, on the other hand, moves in a different register. It is bitter, sober, without exaggerations. And precisely because of that, it relates naturally to coffee. It does not contradict it. It does not try to compensate it with sugar. It accompanies it from a similar place without generating internal clashes. In Japanese culture, especially in traditional routines, there is a very clear idea that repeats itself in nutrition, in movement, and even in the way of organizing the day. Stimuli are not confronted with each other. They are ordered. It is sought that they go in the same direction so that the body does not have to react abruptly. When something activates, it is accompanied by something that does not break the flow. Pure cacao, together with coffee, responds exactly to that logic. Coffee sends a clear message to the organism. It activates, wakes up, accelerates. In adults, that message is felt more strongly than before, not because the body works worse, but because the margins become narrower. When a strong contrast is added to that message, like a very sweet food, the body has to make an additional effort to compensate. And that repeated effort is one of the factors that influences the ups and downs of sugar. Pure cacao does not introduce that contrast. It does not push toward an extreme. It integrates into the same tone as coffee. In Japan, this type of combination is considered respectful of the internal rhythm. It is not about surprising the body, but about allowing it to anticipate. And when the body can anticipate, it responds with less tension. Many people notice that when coffee is taken alone or accompanied by something very sweet, a quick rise appears followed by an equally marked fall. That internal roller coaster is not always perceived as a problem, but it leaves a trace. Over time, that pattern can influence how the organism manages sugar, even in those who never thought they were at risk of diabetes. Pure cacao helps soften that path, not because it blocks anything, but because it reduces the extremes. The energy does not shoot up nor collapse with the same intensity. It stays more even, and that regularity is one of the most important pillars when seeking to care for blood sugar balance throughout the day. In Japanese tradition, there is a strong respect for consistency. What can be repeated without wear is valued more than what generates immediate impact. Pure cacao fits into this vision. It does not generate an explosive sensation. It does not promise quick results. It simply integrates into the routine in a way that the body can sustain. Something I observe frequently is that many people feel the need for something sweet shortly after coffee. It is not always real hunger. Many times it is a response from the body to a stimulus that is too intense at the beginning of the day. By accompanying coffee with pure cacao, that need usually decreases in some people because the initial stimulus was more coherent and less aggressive. In Japan, even in the consumption of hot drinks, attention is paid to these details. It is not only about what is consumed, but about how it is combined. The objective is not to maximize stimulation, but to maintain a stable energy flow. Pure cacao does not break that flow, it accompanies it. When we talk about diabetes, it is important to move away from the idea that everything is defined by big decisions. In practice, the body responds to patterns, to daily repetitions, to the way the morning begins again and again. Coffee is one of those starting points, and how it is accompanied can influence more than many imagine in the way sugar behaves over time. Pure cacao does not act as a direct regulator or as a corrector. Its effect is in the context, in reducing friction, in avoiding the body having to react abruptly. And in adults, where compensation systems are no longer as fast as before, that reduction of friction is especially valuable. The Japanese philosophy is usually summarized in a simple idea: do less, but do it better. Do not force, do not push. Pure cacao, integrated into coffee, responds to that way of understanding everyday health. It does not change the essence of coffee. It does not demand sacrifices. It only helps the stimulus to be received in a more orderly way. When the body is not forced to compensate so much from early on, it usually behaves with greater predictability. And that predictability is an important ally when the goal is to keep sugar more stable and reduce the internal wear that, over the years, can open the door to bigger problems. Pure cacao, then, does not seek protagonism. It fulfills its function quietly, accompanying coffee so that the organism does not have to react to extremes. And in that absence of extremes, many people find a feeling of greater internal calm, something that, in Japanese culture, has always been considered a fundamental base of long-term health. When this accompaniment is maintained over time, what begins to be noticed is not a sudden change, but a feeling of internal order. The body seems to understand the morning message better. Coffee no longer arrives as an isolated stimulus, and pure cacao acts as a bridge that avoids unnecessary contrasts. This way of starting the day is especially relevant when the focus is on sugar and on how to prevent imbalances that, over the years, can open the door to diabetes. In Japanese culture, there is a constant observation of small details. It is not waited for something to fail to correct it. It is adjusted before when everything still works. That mentality is reflected a lot in the way of combining foods. Opposite stimuli are not mixed because that forces the body to react with more force. Pure cacao, by sharing the same register as coffee, maintains a coherent line that the organism can follow without shocks. Many people describe that after incorporating this type of combination, the morning stops feeling unpredictable. There is not so much variation in mood or energy. The feeling of alertness remains, but without marked peaks. And when energy stays stable, the body does not enter compensation modes so quickly. That lesser need to compensate is one of the factors that positively influence the behavior of sugar throughout the day. Diabetes, in its silent development, is usually linked to years of exaggerated internal responses. It is not a punctual event, but a progressive wear. Every time the body has to react intensely, a small load is generated. When that load is repeated every day, the system loses efficiency. Reducing contrasts, as happens when accompanying coffee with pure cacao, can help decrease that daily load. Something interesting that appears over time is the relationship with appetite. In many people, the sudden desire for something sweet after coffee begins to lose strength. Not because anything is being repressed, but because the body does not ask for it with the same urgency. From a Japanese perspective, this is interpreted as a sign that the energy flow is more ordered. When the flow is ordered, extreme demands decrease. Pure cacao does not act directly on blood sugar. Its value lies in the context it creates, in allowing the coffee stimulus not to be so abrupt, in facilitating a more gradual response. And that gradualness is key in stages of life, where the body no longer responds with the same speed as before, but does respond with much greater clarity when it is well accompanied. In Japan, even in everyday practices such as the tea ceremony, this logic is observed. Nothing is done abruptly. Everything has a rhythm. The goal is not to accelerate, but to sustain. Bringing that same idea to everyday coffee can make a silent but profound difference in how the organism manages its internal processes, including sugar. It is important to remember that each body has its own timing. Some people notice these changes quickly, others perceive them more gradually. The essential thing is to observe without anxiety and allow the habit to settle. Always consult with your trusted doctor. Incorporating pure cacao does not replace any professional recommendation, but it can be part of a more conscious routine that respects the body. From my experience, the habits that are best sustained are those that do not generate internal conflict. Pure cacao does not force you to give up coffee or modify it drastically. It only changes the context in which it is consumed. And when the context changes, the body's response changes as well. Over the weeks, many people describe a feeling of greater predictability. They know how they are going to feel after coffee. There are no surprises. And that predictability is an important ally when seeking to care for blood sugar balance and reduce risks associated with diabetes without living in a state of permanent alert. In Japanese philosophy, what does not attract attention but fulfills its function every day is deeply valued. The discreet, the constant. Pure cacao fits this description perfectly. It does not present itself as a solution, but as a silent companion that helps the body not have to react with such intensity from the very beginning of the day. When the organism is not forced to rise and fall abruptly, it tends to conserve its resources better, and conserving resources is fundamental as the years go by. That conservation is one of the most solid foundations for keeping sugar within more stable ranges and protecting long-term health. Pure cacao, integrated thoughtfully with coffee, does not seek protagonism or quick results. Its contribution lies in continuity, in the reduction of extremes, and in respect for the internal rhythm. And that respect for rhythm is one of the clearest teachings that Japanese culture has upheld for generations. Before continuing, I want to remind everyone listening that subscribing to our channel will give you access to this vital information. Let's continue. The next one acts in a completely different way. When I bring chia seeds into a conversation about coffee and sugar, I always clarify one thing from the start. This is not a food that makes itself noticed immediately. It is not felt instantly. It does not provoke a quick reaction nor generate an obvious sensation in the first minutes, and that is precisely where its value lies. Chia does not work from impact. It works from time, from the internal rhythm. Coffee acts quickly. It is direct. It wakes the body with a clear message of activation. In adulthood, that message is usually felt with more intensity than before. The body responds, but it does so with less margin. When that stimulus enters without any kind of accompaniment, the organism has to adapt in an accelerated way. And that adaptation, repeated every morning, is one of the factors that influences the sugar imbalances that many people begin to notice over the years. Chia seeds do not try to compete with that stimulus. They do not slow it down nor contradict it. They accompany it. In Japanese culture, there is a very clear idea regarding slow processes. What is built slowly tends to be more stable. What does not push but sustains generates less wear. Chia fits perfectly into that logic. It does not modify the coffee experience in the moment, but it does influence how the body goes through what comes afterward. Unlike other accompaniments, chia does not seek to soften the flavor, nor change the immediate perception. Its function is deeper. It relates to the way the organism manages stimuli throughout the hours. And that is key when we talk about diabetes, not as an isolated event, but as a process that is affected by the repetition of disordered internal responses. In Japan, there is a very marked respect for foods that work in the background. They are not valued only for what is felt when consuming them, but for how they influence the flow of the day. Chia does not generate peaks. It does not cause abrupt rises. Its contribution is silent. It helps the body not have to react extremely to coffee, but rather to distribute the energy that stimulus generates in a better way. Many people seek visible changes to trust a habit, but the body does not always respond with obvious signals. Sometimes it responds with absences, less early hunger, less need to compensate, less feeling of emptiness shortly after coffee. These absences say a lot. They indicate that the initial stimulus was better managed, and chia, acting over time, can favor that type of response. When sugar moves abruptly, the organism enters a cycle of constant corrections. It rises, falls, adjusts. That cycle is not always perceived as an immediate problem, but it generates wear. Chia seeds, by helping to soften that path, can contribute to the body not having to correct so much. Fewer corrections usually mean more internal stability. From a Japanese perspective, this type of food is considered structural. It is not used to solve something specific, but to order the terrain. It does not act as a switch, but as a base. And when the base is more stable, everything that rests on it responds better. Coffee, in this case, stops being an isolated stimulus and becomes part of a more harmonious sequence. It is important to understand that chia is not perceived as an immediate solution. There is no dramatic before and after. Its effect is built with repetition, with consistency, and that fully aligns with the Japanese way of understanding health. Quick change is not sought, but balance that can be sustained for years. Many adults feel that their body no longer responds to coffee the same way as before. It is not an imaginary sensation. Metabolism changes. The way stimuli are processed also changes. In that context, foods like chia make sense, not to correct, but to accompany, to give the body a greater margin of maneuver in the face of stimuli it once tolerated without difficulty. When talking about diabetes, the focus is usually placed on what is eliminated: less sugar, less flour, less this or that. But rarely is there talk of how the stimuli that do remain are accompanied. Coffee usually stays. It is part of the routine. The question is not whether it is good or bad, but how it is integrated. Chia offers a kinder way of integration. In Japanese tradition, great attention is paid to the order of things, to the moment, to the sequence. Not everything enters together or in any way. This respect for sequence allows the body not to become saturated. Chia seeds, by acting slowly, help coffee not to mark such an abrupt break in internal balance. Another interesting aspect is that chia does not require complex changes. It does not force the routine to be transformed, nor introduce practices that are difficult to sustain. It integrates without noise. And everything that integrates without noise has more possibilities of being maintained. When the goal is to care for sugar in the long term, that ease is a huge advantage. Over time, many people describe a feeling of greater continuity. The day does not start with a push that then has to be compensated. It starts in a more even way, and that even continuity is one of the most important factors when seeking to reduce the wear that, over the years, can influence the appearance of diabetes. Chia seeds do not promise visible or immediate results. Their value lies in what is not seen, in how they help the body move with less friction, in how they contribute to a more ordered internal rhythm. And in Japanese culture, everything that orders the internal rhythm is considered a solid foundation for sustained health. Over the days, this accompaniment begins to show its true value. It does not appear as an immediate effect, but as a feeling of continuity that settles without making noise. Coffee continues to fulfill its function, but the body no longer feels it must respond with urgency. Chia works in the background, ordering the rhythm with which that stimulus unfolds throughout the morning. In Japanese tradition, there is a very concrete observation about slow processes. It is considered that what acts slowly has more possibilities of integrating without generating friction. That is why many foods that do not attract attention in the moment are the most valued in the long term. Chia seeds fit into that view. They do not seek protagonism, they seek stability. When the body receives a strong stimulus like coffee, it sets adjustment mechanisms in motion. If those adjustments are repeated intensely, day after day, the system wears out. In adults, that wear is usually reflected in sugar oscillations that did not exist before. They are not felt as a serious problem. They are felt as irregular tiredness, disordered appetite, or energy that does not hold. Chia, by acting over time, helps soften those oscillations without imposing drastic changes. From a Japanese perspective, much is said about allowing the body to accommodate stimuli. It is not pushed to react. Space is given to process. Chia seeds offer that space. They do not stop coffee. They do not neutralize it. They simply allow its effect to be distributed more evenly, reducing the contrasts that force the organism to correct constantly. Something many people notice after some time is that the morning stops being unpredictable. There is no intense rise followed by an abrupt fall. The body seems to find a clearer internal rhythm, and when the rhythm becomes clearer, sugar tends to behave in a more stable way. This stability is not perceived as something spectacular. It is perceived as normality, and that normality is precisely what is sought when the goal is to reduce risks associated with diabetes. In Japan, even in disciplines such as Aikido or Zen, the idea is emphasized of not resisting movement but accompanying it. The human body works similarly. When a strong stimulus is resisted, tension is generated. When it is accompanied, effort is reduced. Chia seeds fulfill that role of accompaniment. They do not fight against coffee, they move with it. Another important aspect is the relationship with time. Many people abandon habits because they do not feel anything at first. But the body does not always respond with clear sensations. Sometimes it responds with less noise, less urgency, less need to compensate. In sugar management, these silent responses are very valuable. They indicate that the organism is working with less friction. Diabetes does not usually announce itself with strong signals in its initial stages. It is built in silence from small repeated imbalances, a disordered start to the day, a strong stimulus without support, an exaggerated response from the body. Chia, integrated constantly, can contribute to those small imbalances, not accumulating so easily. From the Japanese perspective, caring for health is not a race. It is a path. It is not about arriving quickly, but about maintaining the pace. Chia seeds align with that philosophy. They do not demand constant attention. They do not generate dependency. They simply integrate and fulfill their functions silently, day after day. Many adults appreciate this type of accompaniment because it does not force them to reorganize their entire life. Coffee is still there. The routine remains recognizable. The only thing that changes is the way the body goes through that first stimulus. And when the body goes through the morning better, the rest of the day usually falls into place more easily. It is interesting to observe how, over time, the relationship with hunger also becomes clearer. That confusing sensation of needing something without knowing what does not appear. The body communicates better, and when internal communication improves, decisions become simpler. This is especially relevant for people who seek to care for their sugar without being constantly attentive to every detail. In Japan, it is said that the most difficult thing is not starting a habit, but sustaining it effortlessly. Chia allows precisely that. It does not feel like a task. It feels like part of the routine. And everything that becomes part of the routine has more possibilities of generating real long-term benefits. When observing how the body responds over the weeks, many people describe a feeling of greater internal coherence. Coffee stops being a breaking point. It becomes just another moment of the day, integrated, predictable. That predictability reduces internal stress and facilitates a more stable behavior of sugar, something fundamental when thinking about diabetes from prevention. Chia seeds do not offer immediate results or quick promises. Their contribution lies in time, in how they help the organism not have to correct constantly, in how they favor a kinder, internal rhythm. And in Japanese culture, everything that favors kindness toward one's own body is considered a silent investment in health. But first, what change did you notice in your body or in your energy when accompanying coffee with chia seeds? And how did you feel that influenced your internal rhythm throughout the day? Tell me in the comments. I want to know. And the last one is the one least people use with coffee. In Japan, there is a very clear idea when talking about everyday health. What matters is not the extraordinary, but what is repeated every day without generating tension. What does not require effort, what integrates naturally into the rhythm of life. From that perspective, oats are not a simple food. They are a silent pillar. Oats are everyday, so everyday that many stop seeing them. They do not surprise, they do not attract attention, they do not generate expectations. And precisely for that reason, they are usually underestimated. But when the body changes with the years and when the goal is no longer to perform at maximum, but to maintain balance, oats begin to show a different value, especially when coffee enters the daily routine. Coffee is a direct stimulus. It enters quickly, wakes up, pushes. In adulthood, that push is felt more clearly. The body responds, but it does so with less margin. When that stimulus arrives without a base to sustain it, the internal response can become unstable. And that instability, repeated morning after morning, influences how the organism manages sugar, even before any clear sign related to diabetes appears. In Japanese tradition, no strong stimulus should enter without preparation, before activating stabilize, before accelerating sustain. Oats fulfill exactly that function. They do not seek to compete with coffee nor modify it. They accompany it from below like a firm ground on which the rest of the day can be built. When oats are present in the morning, the body does not receive coffee as an isolated impact. It receives it as part of a sequence, and the human body responds much better to sequences than to shocks. That difference is key when we talk about sugar and silent prevention of diabetes. Oats provide stability, not by generating an immediate sensation, but by what they prevent. They prevent early emptiness. They prevent urgency to eat something sweet shortly after coffee. They prevent the body from having to correct constantly. In Japan, it is said that a good base is not noticed, but when it is missing, everything becomes disordered. Oats work exactly like that. Many people believe that caring for sugar involves eliminating pleasures or living with permanent restrictions. But the Japanese view is different. Sustainable routine is prioritized. What can be repeated without fatigue? What does not generate internal struggle? Oats do not demand attention or vigilance. They simply are. And by being, they order. When the body receives coffee supported by a base like oats, energy is released in a more even way. There are no abrupt peaks or sudden drops. The morning becomes more predictable, and that predictability is one of the most important factors for keeping sugar in a more stable behavior over time. Diabetes, in many people, does not appear as a sudden event. It is built slowly from small repeated imbalances, a disordered start to the day, a strong stimulus without support, an exaggerated response from the body. Oats, integrated constantly, help reduce that disorder from the very first moment of the day. In Japan, the concept of ema, the space between things, is deeply valued. Not everything must be full or accelerated. The body also needs that space. Oats create that internal space. They allow coffee not to occupy the entire stage. They allow the organism to process without hurry. And when the body processes without hurry, sugar tends to behave with greater coherence. Another fundamental aspect is the feeling of satiety, not as fullness, but as calm. That feeling that nothing is missing immediately after coffee. That calm reduces impulsive decisions. It reduces the automatic search for sweet stimuli. And those small decisions, repeated every day, have a direct impact on the relationship with diabetes in the long term. Oats do not promise visible or immediate results, and that, from a Japanese perspective, is a virtue. What really works does not need to announce itself. It manifests in the absence of chaos, in continuity, in the feeling that the day flows without unnecessary shocks. When I observe routines that are sustained for years, I always find the same pattern. There are no extremes, there are no drastic changes, there are solid bases. Oats represent that base, not as a solution, but as a way to care for the internal rhythm from the simplest. In Japanese culture, what is truly valuable is usually invisible. It does not stand out, it does not impose itself, it sustains. Oats, within a morning with coffee, fulfill exactly that role. And when the body feels sustained, sugar stops behaving like a problem to correct and becomes a process that flows with greater stability. Over time, what is perceived is not a striking effect, but a feeling of order. The body begins to recognize the morning as a stable moment. Coffee continues to wake up, but it no longer pushes the organism to react with urgency. Oats fulfill a function highly valued in Japanese culture, sustaining without interfering. In Japan, many habits are built around the idea of preparing the ground before acting. There is no acceleration without a base. There is no stimulation without containment. Oats, by being part of the routine, offer that silent containment that allows sugar not to move abruptly from early on. When the morning is more predictable, the body needs fewer corrections. A tranquil satiety appears, without sudden impulses or quick searches for sweet stimuli. That internal calm reduces daily wear that, accumulated over the years, influences processes related to diabetes. Oats are not experienced as an effort or as a strategy. They are experienced as part of the rhythm, and everything that integrates into the rhythm has more possibilities of being sustained over time, which is what really matters when thinking about sugar balance. Now, if you wish to continue learning, watch the next video. The content of this channel uses characters for educational and informational purposes based on public sources, general studies, and research. It is not intended to diagnose, treat, or replace professional medical recommendations. Each person is different. Always consult with your trusted doctor before applying any advice related to health, nutrition, supplements, or exercise.